Hello and welcome everybody. Thank you so much for turning up here for this, my first public online presentation for 2024, which is all about AI for leaders. So we're going to talk about some of the really important things to think about from a leadership perspective when it comes to AI. Look, I want to start by saying I think that some people think it's a bit too late now, and I shouldn't be saying Happy New Year, but I'm going to start by saying Happy New Year. Hope you had a good break over Christmas and hope you're looking forward to a great year ahead. Let me give you a bit of love here as we go. Okay, so we're going to have an hour. We've got an hour together, and for the people who are here live, it's going to be, I want to make this as engaging and interactive as possible. So some people have already recognized that I'm going to be asking you, well, first of all, if you want to turn on your video, feel free to do that. I can see some lovely faces here of people who have turned on their videos. It's not essential, but you're welcome to do that. And the other thing is, so not the videos, but if you want to use the reaction button as we go, please do that as we go along. Give me your reactions so other people in the room see how you're feeling about this, as well as I get to see it as well. So for people, there's some people here who have been on at my sessions before. There's some who haven't. So my three standard rules of engagement for most of my online presentations, especially if you're here live, is first of all, I want to give you some ideas to think about. So there you'll get some things that think about in this hour that will help you in the year ahead. And can I encourage you to think big in this session, and then you can walk it back a little bit when the world gets in the way, rather than think small and then try to struggle to then think a little bit bigger later. The second thing is I'd love you to be playful. If you're here live in this session, we've got an hour together, and I've allowed plenty of time for engagement, for me to ask you questions, for you to ask me questions, and for all of us to engage if we're here live. If you're watching the recording, great, I'm sure you'll still get value from it, but not as much as if you're here live. And the last thing is I really want to give you some things that you can take away and put into action later, especially around today, especially around AI. So I'm actually going to start by asking you for your reaction, given that it's the start of the year. How are you feeling? Just use the emoji buttons. How are you feeling about 2024 in general? Not about AI, but choose one of the emoji buttons and choose whatever you think is relevant for you in how you're feeling right now. Okay, so I can see thumbs up. Yes, some celebrations. That's really good to see. Fantastic. Fantastic. I can see many other people joining the room now, which is great as well. So we're just doing a feeling for the people who have just joined, how you're feeling about 2024, just using the reaction buttons, the reaction emojis in Zoom. Okay, fantastic. Great. Okay, the other thing I want to do is just ask you, and I'll ask you to put this in chat. In chat, tell me in a word or two, how you're feeling about AI in the year ahead. Because last year was the year that AI really took off because of ChatGPT. And just in the chat room, if you can just tell me how you're feeling about AI for 2024. Okay, just in a word or two, and we'll see what people are saying. Okay, enthusiastic, excited, great to see. Pensive, interesting. Okay, people saying need to learn how to use it effectively. Optimistic and cautious. So cautious is okay. That's all right, and I think that's an appropriate thing to feel like at the moment with AI. Teresa says the same as I feel about new. Let me show you Teresa's comment here. Same potential for use and misuse. Okay, so there's some interesting perspectives about how people are thinking about AI at the moment. And what we're going to do today is look at broadly. We're going to look at 4 things. Let me just restart this bit here. 4 things looking at AI and what implications it's going to have for us coming up in the year ahead. So let me just remove my. Let me show you my slides. So we looked at the rules of engagement. I'm going to look at broadly 4 things, and each of them, I'll give you a brief overview of each of those 4 things, and then I'll ask you to, I'll stop for questions. Okay, so there's plenty of time in the time that we've got here in the hour for you to ask questions, and and when you're asking questions, just type them in the chat and I'll answer them. So as much as possible, I want to make this interactive. So these are the 4 things I want to cover. The first one is about what value are you going to get from using AI. So, oh, I can see some people who are joining now. Let me let everyone into the room. So what are the benefits of AI for you, and what are you going to get out of it, rather than just looking at it as some cool technology? The second thing is your mindset around AI. How are you going to think about AI? And I'm going to give you 2 different perspectives here on how you should or how you can think about AI. The next thing I want to cover is how are you going to bring your team along on the AI journey? Because it's one thing for you to be okay and enthusiastic and excited, as people are already saying, but what about your team? How are they going to feel about AI, and how are you going to bring them along on the AI journey? And the last one I've called resources here. It's kind of like action. So what are you going to put in place to take action on the ideas that you've got, not only from today, but from your AI projects that you've got in mind? Okay, so I've been talking about AI for a long time, and AI has been around for a long time. It's just that it hasn't been mainstream until the launch of ChatGPT in late 2022. But for years before that, I've been talking to my clients about AI. More than 30 years ago, when I studied at UWA, I did computer science, and my computer science thesis was about AI. So I've kind of been following it and like looking into AI since the 1900s. So it has been around for a while, but it's changed significantly since the launch of ChatGPT. And let me show you specifically how it's changed. And this is really important for us to understand, because what ChatGPT has done is not only bring AI out into the mainstream for everybody, but it's changed the way that most people are using AI. So the way that it used to work in the past is it used to work on specific domains or industries. So if you were a radiologist, or you were looking at scans, or in the medical profession, AI has been used for the last few years to be able to interpret scans and diagnose them. If you work in banking and finance, in fact, for any of us, if we've applied for a mortgage in the last 5 to 8 years, there's a good chance that AI has touched your loan application along the way. If you work in HR, there are these AI-based HR tools that have been around for years now that help with things like recruitment, onboarding, helping people with their career progression. And for HR professionals, those tools have been around for a while. If you work in insurance, AI for a while has been around to help you do things like assess claims, and even early in the process, assess people's risk, so that you can customize insurance premiums based on individuals. So that's the way that AI used to work, and it still does, by the way. So that's still a really big part of AI. But then ChatGPT came along, and what ChatGPT did was it was this huge public AI system that everybody can use. It's been trained on multiple domains. It hasn't only been trained on your own data, but because it's been trained on so much, it can give you so much value immediately without you having to do a lot of training. So that's the first thing I want to look at, is the value that you're going to get from AI. And I'd like you to think about, I'm going to ask you a little bit later on, what exactly do you want AI to do for you? Okay, I won't ask you to share in the chat yet, but let me give you some ideas about what it can do. And then when we stop for questions, before I take your questions, I'll ask you, like, what do you think that you're going to be using AI for? What benefits are you going to get from it? So let me give you first one perspective about how you can think about it. So if you think about your working week, and you think about what you have to do in your week, if you think that you've got time in your week as X number of hours, 38.5 or 40 or 50 or 60, what you want to do is spend a lot of that time working in your core primary responsibility. This is what you're being paid to do. And this is ideally what you'd like to be spending as much time as possible in your week as possible. However, you know that you can't spend all your time doing your core responsibility because there's everything else that you have to do as well, and you have to do it. It's part of your work. So there's a whole bunch of other things that take up your time or take time away from doing your core responsibility. So let me actually ask you, so what are the sort of things, and I'm going to ask you to type in the chat, what are the sort of things that that fall into that other category? So fall into that other things that you're doing. So quite often when I ask this, people say things like, just type in the chat, people say things like meetings, reporting, emails, that's really common, interruptions, writing minutes, managing staff, editing documents, HR, medical notes, budgets and scheduling, research. Fantastic. Okay, thanks everyone. Great. Talking with people, writing internal communications. Right, okay, good. Okay, so this is, you have to do it, right? It's not like you're just wasting time. This is part of what you do, but it's taking away from doing your core role. So if you're using a tool like ChatGPT, then what it can do is actually help you with these things that fall into this everything else category and save you time in that area, so you can spend more time using your brain and do the things that, so you've got more time available to do the things that you're really responsible for doing. Okay, so this is really important. It's an important distinction. So there's some people in your organization who might be responsible for implementing AI in your core roles. So if you work in a large medical group, there might be some people who are using AI for interpreting scans. And those people will help the medical professionals do their role better. But for everybody else, we can still get value from AI if we use it to remove some of these sort of things that people are typing in, like Marilena says writing internal comms, Steve says inefficient requests, ideation, spreadsheets, cleaning. Okay, so these are all the sort of things that you don't necessarily, they're not core responsibilities, but AI can help you reduce some of the time that you spend in these things so that you can spend more time in those core responsibilities. Okay, so as I said, I want to give you plenty of time to ask questions. So let me ask you a question first. Where are you, if I say to you, like, where do you see yourself getting the most value from AI in your role, in your team? Is it in your core responsibility? Is it in the saving time in other areas? And if so, if you already have an idea in mind about how you can see where AI can help you, just type it in the chat. Okay, where do you see that you might get some value from using AI? Okay, and I'm just going to share a couple of the results. So Bronwyn says writing and updating textbooks. Yeah, okay. So it's not core, but it's an important part of what you need to do. And if AI can help you with that, fantastic. Okay, what else? Scheduling. Okay, so Ray has got a core responsibility, better business system. So if that's part of your business and part of what you have to do, great, do that. Okay, great. Lots of examples coming in. Finding different ways to express an idea. Great. Okay, so I use this a lot. So I use AI for ideation. Quite often, one of the common questions I get, or one of the common concerns that people have, is that AI is just going to turn us, it's going to make us less creative, less innovative. And I think it's the exact opposite. It can actually help us be more creative and innovative because it can give us some initial ideas to get started with. Okay, Vernon says preparation of board papers. Yeah. Okay, so again, it's really good at doing that sort of, it's important work and it requires some expertise, but it's really good to get us started with that. I'm just going to highlight this one from Les. So change the tone and language of documents. And I'm just highlighting this one because, again, one of the common objections to people using tools like ChatGPT is they say that everything seems to look the same. So ChatGPT stuff that's generated by ChatGPT looks very ChatGPT generated, and it doesn't have to be that way. Okay. Good. Okay, please ask me some questions. Just in terms of the value that you want to get from AI. I'm happy to answer any questions that you've got. Given that this is a leadership program to this session today, I'm expecting most of the questions are going to be around leadership topics rather than very specific technical topics around ChatGPT. But I'm going to just keep an eye on the chat and see what questions come up, and I'm happy to answer them as you raise them. There'll be other opportunities as we go to ask and answer questions as well. Yeah, so Andrew, okay, oh sorry, that wasn't a question. Okay, Natalie's asking a really good, a really important question, which I'm going to actually answer later, but I'll answer it now. Do you think it's worth paying for ChatGPT 4? Natalie, let me just say the brief answer for this is yes, I do think it's worth doing it, and I'll explain some of the reasons why a little bit later. Yeah, okay. Actually, let me ask you a question for the room. Can you just type... actually, we might do that when we get to that point, okay? Teresa's saying concerns around machine learning, its impact to GDPR and privacy. Yep, okay, so your concerns. Okay, good that you've got concerns. If you've got a specific question, ask it. Otherwise, we will look at this a little bit later as well. Okay, let me continue here because we'll look at this, we'll come back to some of the questions, the couple of questions that have been raised, one around paying for ChatGPT 4 and the other one around concerns. We'll cover these very soon, in fact, so let's get back to that. Okay. So let's look at this second area, which is your mindset around AI and AI projects. And again, I'm looking at this from a leadership perspective. So if you're a leader and you're responsible for implementing and integrating AI for your team and organization, what sort of mindset should you have? So I'm going to share two things here. It's very brief, but these are two I picked out of the ones that I talk about when I talk to leaders. I picked two of the attitudes that I think are the most useful. So to start with, let me tell you a specific example of a situation that a senior leader asked me recently. So I was working with a group of senior leaders facilitating a workshop around them using AI. They were working in procurement and contract management, but actually this applies to leaders in any role. And one of the leaders said to me, she said, we advertised for a job recently, and we had a couple of applicants who replied, and their reply, before they're requesting an interview, their reply was obviously generated by ChatGPT. What do you think about that? And so I said to her, what do you think about that? Actually, I asked the whole room, what do you think about that? So somebody's replied, they've obviously used ChatGPT in their reply. What do you think about it? Can I ask again, let me ask the room, what do you think about that? If somebody replies to a job ad, so you haven't hired them, what do you think if their reply obviously has been assisted by ChatGPT? Just type in the chat, what do you think? And I'm interested to know what your perspectives are. Okay, so let me share from the results some of the comments that are being shared, and you can all see them if you're here live, but let me share some of them for on the screen here. So it's lazy, get the chat, but then put in your own words. Neil says, shows initiative. Eleanor says, just as many people use CV preparation services. If it's obvious in their use, isn't that great? Andrew, were you in that session where somebody asked a question? Vicky says, I think it's good, as long as they understand the content and have modified the response. Yeah, okay. Bronwyn says, good use of technology, but can't get to know the real person. Jackie, I mean, imagine it would still be their opinion, but has assisted with the compilation of the answer. Fantastic. This is really good because it's a very broad range. And since that came up a couple of months ago, I've asked a number of groups about this. Kerry says we had this situation before, and the people, when they turned up, have been unable to speak in person at the same level. Okay, so and Marilena says it's just another tool, so why not use it? In fact, this is one of the things that I say. If they said to you if they got to the interview, if you weren't able to detect that they'd used ChatGPT and they got to the interview and they said, "Oh, we Googled your company before coming to this interview," your response would probably be, "Well, duh, of course. We expect you to do that." What if they said, "Oh, we used LinkedIn. We went to LinkedIn, looked at other people who work for you to see what sort of projects they're working on, what they're posting about." You might go, that's kind of good. If they said, somebody else said, if they use a career coach and I talked to my career coach to see how I could add value and demonstrate the value that I can add and also ask about what value you could give me in my career, you might go, yes, okay. And then if they said, "Oh, and by the way, I use ChatGPT in my response," would you treat it the same way? Would you treat it, as Marilena says, as just another tool, and so why not use it? And in fact, you might even say, this is the sort of person, rather than saying, I know that some people have the perspective that this is so lazy, and if they're going to be so lazy in applying for the job, what are they going to be like if they get the job? And there are other people at the other extreme who are going, these are the people we need to hire. What do we need to do? A bit rough around the edges, but they're keen, they're enthusiastic, they're using leading edge technology, and they're willing to use it to solve a problem, an immediate problem that they've got. Okay, so this is the thing around, this is your perspective around using AI it makes a big difference to the outcome and the results you're going to get from it. And I don't have any judgment about any of your responses that came up here or the responses that I get from leaders when I ask this question. But I will say that your attitude towards this will make a big difference to the way that you consider it in the future. Let me ask you another question. So this is a little bit of a fun question. Who's ever used AI and in the last year, let's say, and been unimpressed with with at least one of the results? So you've used it and you found that it hasn't been great in something. Okay, just type yes or no. So say yes or no in the chat to say, yes, I found the time that it wasn't great. And we'll see what the room says. Yep. Okay. So it's not surprising, right? A couple of people have said, no, I've never found it unimpressive. But most people are saying, yes, it has been. I've used it, and in the past, it hasn't worked perfectly, or it hasn't been as impressive as I would like. So just thank you for that. So just keep in mind that most people here have said, yes, it's been really impressive. Okay, so what are we up to? Like 80-20, right? Yes, it's been really impressive. Just keep in mind that it is impressive, and this is the worst it'll ever be. So it's only going to get better and better and better. And just like most of these tools that we're using, it's not perfect. In fact, I would highly recommend to you that you follow this principle when you're thinking about AI tools. I highly recommend this acronym, which I actually made up myself, NEIGF. Anyone in the chat room want to guess what NEIGF stands for? Is crucial to your understanding and applicability of AI. It stands for near enough is good enough. So it's the 80-20 principle. So the 80-20 principle says that 80% of the results come from 20% of your efforts. And then the other 20% of time that you put in, to get the other 20%, you have to put in like a whole other 80% of work to get the final results. I see someone in the chat going, oh, thank you for letting me know that I've got the acronym wrong. Yeah, that's right. Actually, it should be NEIGE, right? Yeah. But you could say that I've got it 80% right. Okay, maybe that was funnier in my head when I was preparing. Okay, but here's my real advice around this. When you're using an AI tool, think of it as an assistant, not an expert. So if you actually do say, I'm going to be okay with it generating 80%, and you go, I'm okay with that, please say, be good enough, say that's good enough. Because often you'll use a tool like ChatGPT and it'll get you 60, 70, 80%, and you don't necessarily want to put the extra work in to get to 100%. You're better off taking that 80% and saying, this is really good, I'm glad it's done the heavy lifting for me, and now I will then I'll use my own brain power to do the final 20%. And even if it gets you 50%, in a couple of minutes, it will save you so much time. So near enough is good enough. AI is your assistant, it's not an expert. The next thing, which a couple of people have already raised some of these issues, is for us as leaders, part of our responsibility is to understand the risks, the problems, the challenges of using AI tools. So there are people on your team, I'm sure, who are really keen, really enthusiastic about pressing the accelerator as hard as possible so they can go as fast as possible. You might be like that as well. But you also want to make sure that the car's safe. You've got the seat belts and other safety features. And if you don't do it as a leader, then who's going to do it? And the good news is that when you build safety features in, you can actually go faster. So a large part of what we do, our responsibility as leaders, is not to be resistant to AI, but to understand some of the risks, the problems, and the challenges. So you'd have seen examples, you may have seen examples like this over the last year. This is in May. This was a lawyer who submitted a brief to a court in the USA and used ChatGPT to generate the brief, and was horrified to discover that it completely made up some of the cases that were quoted in the brief. Because ChatGPT is a people pleaser. If you ask it to make up a brief with quoting 5 cases for precedent, it will do that, even if it completely makes up those cases. This is another one. This was in the Australian towards the end of last year, talking about cheat bots rampant in our schools. And the interesting thing was, this is not saying students were cheating, it's saying that staff were using tools like ChatGPT to write lesson plans and trying to make, but they weren't aligned with the Australian curriculum. And even when they tried to integrate them, because they didn't realize the near enough is good enough, that it only does 80% of the job, they were still making mistakes. And this article was actually quite sympathetic. They were saying that teaching staff are overworked, underpaid, and stressed out, and they don't have the time to do everything. So they were turning to this without realizing that, okay, it helps with efficiencies, but they've still got to add the quality at the end. This is my favorite example. This came up, actually, I'll tell you the story first, and then I'll tell you why this slide is there. So in the wake of the PwC scandal last year, the Australian government set up a Senate inquiry, and it's running now, and they were taking submissions. And one of the submissions came from 3 senior academics at 3 well-respected universities. I won't even say what the universities are, you can look them up. But these were senior academics who submitted a paper to the Senate for this formal Senate inquiry, talking about wrongdoing from these big 4 consulting firms and other consulting firms as well in their dealings with the Australian government. So serious allegations of wrongdoing. The only problem was that they used Google Bard, which is Google's version of ChatGPT, to write that report, or partially write that report. And again, they were completely ignorant that they had to do fact-checking and do the quality on top of what it generated. And they submitted this to a formal government inquiry. And the reason I'm telling this story is to make the point that this is not some intern, this is not some naive job candidate using ChatGPT for applying to, responding to a job application. These are people, their day job is to write reports. Their day job is to talk about integrity. Their day job is to source and double check sources and reference sources carefully. And even they can make massive blunders by using new technology and not realizing the power and its limitations. And actually, they got off really lightly, not even a slap on the wrist. They just apologized and resubmitted it, presumably not AI generated this time. But this has serious implications and definitely damage, serious potential damage to the people who they named, the consulting firms. So I'm just sharing this to just emphasize that for us as leaders, we need to educate our people and understand for ourselves as well about the risks, the problems and challenges of using AI. Even places like these universities have very strict rules about how their students can and can't use AI, but their staff were freely able to do it and made mistakes with it. So I'm not picking on these people specifically, but I'm making the general point that there are people who are using AI, really smart, established, experienced, well-credentialed people for whom this is a new tool and they still need to know how to use it and use it effectively. Okay, questions, comments, anything you want to share, share in the chat. Yep, so Ray says, as Amazon found when they used it for hiring, so Amazon some years ago, almost 10 years ago now, they used it, they built their own AI tool to try and assess incoming resumes and CVs from candidates to identify which were the best candidates to hire, which are the ones that the AI would predict would be good leaders in the future, and so on. And they based it on, so what they did was they dumped in all the data from Amazon's current and past employees and their career path through Amazon, and they tried to use that to match with prospective candidates. And what they found was that you can probably guess the people that the AI was prioritizing. It was basically blokes, right? White men specifically, because they were the people that Amazon had hired in the past and had been successful in the organization. So that bias from the past was influencing AI and the AI decisions in the future. And Amazon, to their credit, did exactly the right thing. What they said this is not working, this is wrong, we'll just can the program. But you're using tools now like ChatGPT, which have got bias built into them. And it's not always obvious. It's not as obvious as saying, "Oh, they're recommending men are going to be better leaders than women based on past data." It wasn't as obvious as that. There are more subtle problems. Okay, Kim says, "Does everyone have a policy about using AI?" No, but I think you should. I definitely think you should have a policy about using AI, and the policy is going to have some things which are strict policy and some which are broad guidelines, and it has to be fluid and flexible. By the way, if you're looking for some assistance with what sort of governance issues you should look at, well, a couple of things you can do. One is you can definitely engage me to come and run a session for your leaders. But the other thing you can do is the Australian government, education ministers around Australia, have now agreed to allow AI in public schools around Australia. Most of them last year had banned it, apart from in South Australia. But now they've allowed it, and they've published a very short and simple framework for schools to follow. It's not policy, but it's guidelines for schools to follow. I recommend that to all leaders in all industries. Just download it and then modify it, but it covers the sort of things that you want to look at: transparency, fairness, security. If you're looking for a checklist of things to put into your policy, search for the Australian government curriculum framework generative AI framework. Okay, any other questions? Here we go. Yeah, Sonia says, here, put the protections in, and then you can go faster. Kate says, yes, I was going to ask the same thing as Kim about policy. Steve says groupthink. So again, Steve, I think it doesn't necessarily have to generate or tend to move you towards groupthink. If, as I said, I quite often use it to be more creative rather than even from my own thinking from the past. I'll ask AI, for example, to generate every week when I do a blog, I'll ask AI to generate 20 titles and subtitles for this blog, and I'll choose from them or use them as an inspiration to then adjust it, so that I'm not generating things which are only come from my experience. Anastasia, great to see you here. Great to see you here. To do with AI in schools, my dad said something about the rules becoming weaker. I'm not sure what you mean by the rules, Anastasia, but I think maybe you're referring to what I said earlier about now it's allowed in schools. So I know Anastasia, she's in year 6, so she's in the last year of primary school, and now your school will allow staff to use AI to assist you. And I think maybe that's what he meant by the rules becoming weaker, because last year that was banned in state schools. Independent schools, they could do their own thing, and many of them were doing it. Okay, John says, I don't think we can ignore the use of AI. It's now mainstream. How can we best use it in our context? Yeah, exactly right. Okay, it's just like any other tool. If you said, oh, I'm not going to use ChatGPT or any other AI tool, it'd be like saying, I was asked to do this job, but I decided I don't want to use Google, so I went to the library, spent days of research, I went to other sources, interviewed people, rather than doing a quick Google search and getting the result. Obviously, there's a time and place for both of them, but we shouldn't just ignore it just because we haven't got the, just because we don't know how to use it well. Okay, good. Thanks for these questions. This is really good. And our time is going well. Our time's going well. Let me just comment on Genevieve's. Yes, currently studying secondary teaching, so I'm keen to know as much as possible. Yeah, absolutely, Genevieve. And look, I'm working with some schools at the moment. Later this month, I'm working with a school where the principal said to me, I won't say who she is, even though I'm not going to say anything negative. I don't think she'd mind, but I haven't got her permission. She said to me, Gihan, can you come in and talk to our staff? Some of them have been teaching, leading, and managing the same way for 20 to 30 years, yours truly included. Okay, so she was enlightened enough to recognize that she was in the same boat as well. And she said, we want you to come in and show us how we can absolutely improve the student experience. The students are excited and enthusiastic about coming to class because they're already using AI at home and they know it's going to be a big part of their future. So absolutely, this is going to be really important. Yeah, exactly right. As Sonia says, using it well is the key. It's a tool. Yeah, great. Okay, let's move on to this third area here, which is actually bringing your team along on the journey, on the AI journey. And I'm just going to share a couple of ideas here, and I've got some additional resources for you here. I've got a handout which I will actually let me pop that handout in the link in the chat room for you right now. You don't need it straight away, but it'll be an additional resource for you. If you're watching the recording, I'll make sure the handout is, there's a link to it as well where you can get the wherever you get the recording. So the first thing for your team is, it might sound obvious, but keep having to emphasize this to leaders if you're going through any sort of innovation, change, digital transformation, that's what we used to call it before AI, and now AI has kind of leapfrogged that. It is part of digital transformation, but any sort of change, you absolutely need to bring your people along on the journey, because they're going to be an extremes along the spectrum. There's some people who are really keen, they're really enthusiastic about it. As I said, they're gung-ho about it and want to go straight away. There are other people at the other extreme who are scared and resistant because they're even worried that it's going to take their job. And there are people in between. So you have to have real conversations with people in your team, in your organization. And the sort of questions you're asking are both about like the emotionally, how do they feel about it? What are their concerns? What are they excited about? And also from an intellectual thing, what do they need to know? How is this going to change their work practices? How is this going to change the way their office operates, the team dynamics, and so on? If you'd like to get an example of the sort of questions that you can ask in those sort of sessions, download that handout. That handout has a series of words. It's like a workbook. So whenever I run programs for leaders or teams, we use a workbook which is customized for the topic that we're talking about. In the handout, what I've done is a workbook of some of the more useful worksheets around AI that I use when I'm talking to leaders. And there's one there about bringing them along on the AI journey. There's the other one that's there is about this. So having an AI champion in your team. I highly recommend that unless you are a leader in a very, very small business, or you've got a very, very small team, unless you're in that situation, I highly recommend that you are not the AI champion in your team. And when I say champion, I don't mean like a superstar Sam Kerr kind of champion. I mean somebody who's going to champion AI for the team. So you look for somebody who's already keen, enthusiastic, excited about it, and you ask them to be the AI leader within your team. Again, there's a worksheet. One of the worksheets in that handout that you download is all about identifying and then working with that AI champion to, first of all, help and enable and facilitate them, and second, help overcome some of the obstacles they might face, because they might be a very junior person in the team, and so they're going to face the sort of problems that you get in large organizations, especially where they might not be seen as somebody with influence, somebody with authority, and yet you want to help them, so you want to use your influence to help them. So please download those handouts, download the handout and use the worksheets. And any of the worksheets in there, I give you you have my permission to share them with other people in your organization as well, if you think it's valuable. Okay, questions again. Let me ask you, just in terms of AI champions, have you identified an AI champion for your team? So let's reset this, and in the chat, say yes or no. So do you know who's going to be the AI champion in your team? Even if you haven't spoken to them yet, have you identified who they might be, who you're going to have a conversation with? Yeah, great. Okay. This is really interesting that it's about 50-50. So when I've talked to other groups around this, and not always in an online presentation, but often when I ask the question in a group of leaders who already has identified an AI champion, it's very few who've done that. So it's great to see in this room that you've got, at least you're thinking about somebody, an actual person who might be an AI champion for your team. It's turned out to be 50-50. Fantastic. Okay, great, because I think that's a really valuable thing that you can do to get your team on board, and that's what we're looking for here. So how are we going to get your team on board? Okay, ask me any other questions now about bringing your team on board. The last section we're doing is about what you're going to invest in resources, time and money and learning and so on. But please ask me questions now. Okay, so Jackie says, and I think this is the AI champion, is a younger person who's naturally engaging with tech already. So I'm a really big fan of young people, younger people in professional and personal roles, and the mindset and attitudes of, well, Gen Ys maybe 10 to 15 years ago, now Gen Zs and Gen Alphas. And if you know me for a while, you know that, because they know the future, right? And they don't have a lot of baggage that we sometimes have the temptation to hold on to. Okay, any questions about bringing your team along on the journey or about AI champions? Yeah, Amanda says, yeah, one of the concerns is intellectual property and the legalities of that. It's absolutely something that you should think about. Kate says already tech savvy. Yeah, exactly right. And this is why, coming back to the question about the candidate who applied and had used ChatGPT in their application, great. I think that's fantastic. And you'd almost be, if you're an enlightened leader looking at AI, you'd almost be looking at, what do I need to do to convince the rest of the interview panel or convince my boss that this is the right person, because I want them in there and they can be the AI champion, even if they're not perfect in other ways. And I agree with Bronwyn's comment here. Don't just assume it needs to be a young person. Absolutely right, and I 100% agree with that. It's quite often, in fact, I think young people, when you're looking at going to them for advice and mentoring and stuff, generally there's a tendency to talk to them about technology because you think they know more about technology, and that's often true, but of course they know about a lot of other things as well, and it's true for all demographics. So I recommend that the person you're looking for an AI champion is somebody who's already enthusiastic and excited about using AI. They may be a pest at the moment. So that's what you look for first, that their attitude towards AI rather than their demographic or age. Even if you find, so this applies regardless of age, and even if you find that they don't necessarily have the skills yet, but they're excited about it, great, bring them on board and they can be a champion. Yeah. Les says at 78, I'm way ahead of my staff. Great, good. Okay, I'm just going to see if there's any other questions. There's a couple here around. Yeah, okay, so this is around protection of ChatGPT. So this is part of the rules that you, okay, we won't get into the legality of using ChatGPT or not using ChatGPT, because I'm not a lawyer, never been one, never played one on TV. But this is actually something to think about, like how are you going to monitor and manage that. Let's look at this last area, because I can see some questions and comments, and we had some earlier about the resources that you might want to invest in to bring people on board and kind of implement and integrate AI in your team. So the first one is, do you pay for it or not? And I think for everybody, I don't say this for everybody, but I would say for everybody here in this room, you should pay for ChatGPT if your organization doesn't pay for it already. So if you don't have a paid subscription, pay for it. So the free version is free. The paid version, and the free version is pretty good. The paid version is much better than the free version, in that it works on a much bigger database. It's more powerful in that it can generate images and it can interpret PDF documents that you can upload, and there's some other features that are in there, so it's worth getting the paid version. It's $20 a month, which is about $30 Australian dollars, $30 a month, $1 a day. I always like to say it's the same as my Care subscription. Okay, good. Anastasia's saying, yep, it's totally worth it. Great. Thank you, Anastasia. Teresa said we're already paying. Great. So if your organization is paying, then you don't need to pay yourself. But if it's not, then I reckon getting a personal subscription is worthwhile. The other thing I'd say, when you're getting when you're paying for any of these AI tools, most of them will offer you a monthly fee or an annual fee, and if you pay the annual fee, you'll get a discount. ChatGPT doesn't. You can only pay for OpenAI, the company behind it, only monthly, as far as I know. I would recommend for any of these AI tools, pay the monthly fee ongoing, because AI is moving so fast that sometimes you might find that the tool that you're using, that you paid an annual fee for, now there's a better tool, and you're reluctant to let go of the one you've got because you've already paid for it. And it's true, like there's a mental reluctance because you've already paid for it, even though it's a sunk cost, to switch to something else. If you're paying monthly, month by month, there's still a learning curve to learn the new tool, but at least you haven't invested for a whole year in a tool that is not obsolete, but there might be something better and more relevant for you. I'm not saying you always need the best in the world. However, it is useful to have the mindset to say, is there a tool that's going to do something better for me now, and is it worth switching? Look, I don't want to go into too much detail about the actual logistics and the mechanics of using tools like this. Like, is ChatGPT the one that's preferred to use? Are the AI tools worth paying for? Look, there's a whole bunch of them. If you're using the Microsoft suite of tools in your organization, then you'll have the Microsoft Copilot suite of AI tools, which if you haven't got already, it's being rolled out around the world, so you'll have access to it soon. If you're using the Google suite of tools, then Google's got its own AI tools as well. So there are other AI tools available for you. That's part of your due diligence as a leader, to figure out what's going to be the most useful and the most relevant for you. The second thing I will say is that it's not just only about money, it's also about time. So let me tell you about my my nephew. My nephew Riley is he's 20. He's studying physiotherapy at the moment. He wants to play cricket for Australia, and also to earn some money, he started a digital marketing agency, a digital marketing company. It's all AI based. So if you want somebody to build your website and do search engine optimization and stuff like that, completely AI based, then Riley's business does that. And to do this, to learn this, because he doesn't have a technology background, apart from the fact that every Gen Z does, he paid $60 US for an online course about digital marketing using AI. But the wrinkle is that wasn't the real cost of it. The real cost is that the course requires him to spend what they advise to spend 87 hours of time working either in the lectures and all the follow-up work and investigating and actually doing the tutorials and doing the work. So 87 hours, right? 87 hours. That's more than 2 working weeks. If you think about like a typical typical worker in an organization that's working 40 hours a week, 38 hours and so on. In fact, if you're thinking about training, it's about 3 hours of training, because generally a training day is about 6 hours, because otherwise people's brains are fried. So that's literally, it's like a 3-week training course. So when's the last time that you invested 3 weeks in your professional development? And I'm not saying that everyone needs to do this. However, learning some of these tools does require an investment of time, not only of money. So for example, one of the skills that's really useful to know now, if you use a tool like ChatGPT, is knowing how to ask it or prompt it to get better results. I've heard from so many people in the last year who've said, I've tried it, didn't really work, might as well just have used Google. Well, it's not the same as Google. Or they said, I've tried it and it gives pretty generic results. Well, it's because you didn't know how to prompt it well enough. Okay, now that's a limitation of the AI, and you didn't know. It's not your fault, but it's a limitation of the AI at the moment. And at the moment, there's a really useful skill to learn how to get better prompts into ChatGPT and other tools to get better results. This is one of those interesting skills, right? So at the moment, it's a skill that's really valuable right now. But I reckon in 12 months, actually I should probably say 6 months, because every time you make a prediction about AI, maybe half the time it's going to take. In 6 months, that might be obsolete, because the AI is going to get smart enough that it will be able to, so you don't have to necessarily be very clever in how you prompt it. It'll know, so that you just prompt it in natural language without too much thought, and it's smart enough to give you the answer that you actually wanted. It's a bit like Google. So some of us are old enough to remember the very early days of Google, where you had to learn all this fancy language, like if you used plus in front of a word, or you used minus in a word, or you had to put words in quotation marks, and sometimes capital letters meant something special. Now, of course, we don't need to do that. But this is one of those skills that is worth learning now, because it's going to be really, really valuable now, even if it's going to be obsolete in the future. Okay, and also, I run some sessions around this. So I run the AI at Work Masterclass, is all about how to use a tool like ChatGPT. So when I'm working with the school staff, I'm going to show them how to use ChatGPT effectively for creating lesson plans and quite detailed lesson plans. The other thing that I do, since we're talking about what I offer, the AI for Leaders Masterclass is more in-depth version, if you like, of this session that I'm doing today. So I hope I've given you an overview and some valuable insights today. And then if you want more details, talk to me about how we can run the AI for Leaders Masterclass for people in your team, in your organization as well. And the last one is my Leveraging AI keynote presentation. All of these, by the way, you can go to gihan.ai, because I've got the gihan.ai domain name, and it all goes to a page on my website where you can find out about these services. Okay, I want to just quickly because we're now at the time where we're going to wrap up. Any last questions in the last couple of minutes? I can see. I was going to ask for some reactions and see how you feel about the session so far and what you've got from it. In fact, let me actually ask you to. Let's do that this way. Can you type in the chat? Oh, okay, we've got a couple of responses there. Can you type in the chat how you feel about AI now moving forward? Okay, and we'll see the responses coming up here. Good. So I really like the one that using AI as a partner. There's positive, very positive, curious. Okay, okay, and you can see here the most common answer is positive, and I'm really pleased to see that people are positive about it, and positive and optimistic, because it's going to be a big part of our future, and especially for us as leaders, I think we've got a responsibility. Great. Brilliant. So thanks everyone. Thank you for coming along, for taking part. My last message for you is one that I often share when I'm talking to groups about any about any innovation, change, or new technology like this, is don't wait for all your ducks to line up in a row. Don't wait for things to be perfect, because that's not going to happen. Start before you're ready, because the world won't wait for you. And it's absolutely true for AI as well. So thank you for coming along. Thank you for participating so enthusiastically. I'll send out the recording to everybody afterwards as well. So if you want to review any of this, this is there as well. And I wish you all the best, not just for the rest of the day, but for the rest of the year as well. I'll see you in the future. Thanks everyone. Bye for now.